Welcome to the third session of Week 5. In this session, we will look at artists who went outside of Korea to obtain knowledge on new types of art and visual media at the turn of the 20th century. From the late 19th century, the Joseon state was made acutely aware of the strength and sophistication of modern science and technology made tangible through the military power of Western nations. A symbolic testament to the power of Western military might was Qing China's defeat and British victory in the two Opium Wars of the 1840s and 1850s. Moreover, the growing power and influence of Japan attested to the benefits of accepting Western technology in preserving and furthering national strength in the competitive international arena. Even prior to the opening of ports, the growing voice of progressive Joseon intellectuals and King Gojong's own open attitude toward Western technology and goods led to the dispatching of painters from the Royal Bureau of Painting to China to obtain knowledge and expertise on Western technology. Now, you may wonder why the state would send painters for this purpose. Today, scientists would be sent out to learn about modern weaponry and technology rather than painters. In reality, court painters of the Joseon dynasty were closer to technicians rather than artists of today. Although their main task in court were to produce various types of paintings, this was regarded as a technical skill rather than a creative output of individual artists. Moreover, paintings or doha in the 19th century was understood as a tool to further national prosperity and military strength. It was not until the 20th century, most definitely in the 1910s, that the term misul came to be popularly used to refer to the idea of fine arts. The Korean term Buguk Gangbyeong sums up Joseon state's aspirations at the end of the 19th century and contemporary perceptions on art and painting. Buguk means rich country, and Gangbyeong means strong army. Together, they sum up Joseon Korea's desire to forge a strong economy and military power to survive in the New World Order. This state objective at the end of the 19th century was also applied to the arts. Painting and art were seen as tools to achieving the bigger objective of acquiring state wealth and military power. And court artists such as An Jung-sik and Jo Seok-jin, who had the ability to record and bring back visual information on new technology, were dispatched to China. An Jung-sik and Jo Seok-jin were the last generation of Joseon court painters. Both painters were part of the Yeongsansa delegation that traveled to Tianjin, China in 1881 to learn the methods of manufacturing and training with modern weapons. During the year-long stay in Tianjin, the artists were employed as draftsmen, responsible for drafting up diagrams and blueprints of new weapons and their functions. Today, their roles would be similar to that of engineers. The dispatching of professional painters to contribute to the state's accumulation of knowledge on modern weaponry reflects both the importance placed on Buguk Gangbyeong and the understanding of art and painting as a practical utility at the end of the 19th century. Both An Jung-sik and Jo Seok-jin returned to Korea and continued to work for the Royal Bureau of Painting. They both participated in the painting of the royal portrait of Gojong in 1902, the highest honor for a court painter. It is entirely possible that their training in China facilitated the selection of both An Jung-sik and Jo Seok-jin as artists for the royal portraits. Without straying far from traditional painting techniques used by court painters, An Jung-sik incorporated Western painting styles into his works. For instance, An Jung-sik's famous painting of Gyeongbokgung Palace incorporated linear perspective to express distance and depth in landscape painting. A few trees and a stone guardian on the right guide the viewer's eye into the painting. However, this effect is diminished as An obscures much of the palace buildings with trees, leaving only the rooftops visible, lacking three-dimensional depth. The architecture serves mainly as a backdrop to the prominent, densely clustered mountains. Suspended between different spatial concepts, the work challenges traditional literati and court painting. Anjung-sik also opened up a private painting studio called Gyeongmukdang around this time, where he also trained young painters like Lee Do-young. Both Cho Seok-jin and Anjung-sik became influential figures in the Korean art scene, nurturing younger generations of artists of the early 20th century. The mission to Tianjin in 1881 was not the only mission dispatched abroad with the purpose of collecting information on modernization. The Joseon state also sent delegations to Japan to observe and learn from their modernization efforts, particularly in areas like military organization, technology, and governance. The 1881 Shinsa Yuramdan, or Josa Shichaldan, to Japan was a discrete mission aimed to gather information that could be useful for Korea's own modernization and reform processes without aggravating anti-reformist opinions of conservative Joseon officials. After two Sushinsa missions to Japan in 1876 and 1880, it was confirmed that Japan had achieved considerable success with its modernization policies of the Meiji Restoration. Therefore, it became necessary to send multiple representatives to conduct a thorough investigation for Joseon's own future policies on strengthening the nation and military. This led to the dispatch of the Shinsa Yuramdan, a delegation consisting of 12 core members tasked with studying various aspects of Japanese society and its advancements. Among the delegation was Kim Yong-won, a talented professional painter of the Royal Bureau of Painting, who participated in the production of several royal protocols and the royal portrait of King Cheolcheong in 1861. Kim Yong-won had been dispatched as part of the 1876 Sushinsa mission to Japan, led by Kim Ki-soo, where he helped acquire various machinery, weapons, and raw materials. The Sushinsa delegation experienced photography firsthand during this trip to Japan, and several members had portrait photographs taken in a studio. It is thought that Kim Yong-won was able to learn photography from a Japanese photographer based in Busan around 1879. After continuing to work for the state on the 1881 Shinsa Yuramdan to Japan to study the navigation of modern vessels, he returned to Japan once more in 1882 to further his skills in photography. Kim Yong-won was able to purchase various photography equipment from his trips to Japan, and in the summer of 1883, he established a photography studio in Seoul. Although the studio was operated with the help of a Japanese photographer, Honda Shunnosuke, it is considered to be the first photography studio in Korea. That same year, Hwang Chul, a first-generation Korean photographer and painter, also opened up a studio. Ji Eun-young also opened up a studio in Seoul in February 1884. Ji Eun-young was Jungin-born and was employed as a member of the Sushinsa delegation of 1882. It was during this trip to Japan that he first encountered photography. In 1883, he was appointed as a clerk in the Office of Military and Government Affairs, and he established a photography studio in the following year. He was the first Korean to photograph King Gojong in 1884, along with American photographer Percival Lowell, who also became the first foreigner to photograph the king. Although Ji Eun-young's career as an official reached an end in 1886 after his failed attempt to assassinate Kim Ok-gyun, the instigator of the Gapsin coup, he continued his career as an artist. As painters who turned to photography, both Kim Yong-won and Ji Eun-young played a key role in bridging traditional art forms with new photographic techniques. The Royal Bureau of Painting was officially abolished around 1894 with the Kabul reforms. The gradual advent of photography that substituted the role of painters to create visual records in the court, as well as the lack of resources to sustain the Bureau, were some key factors to its abolition. Court painters, or hwawon, no longer had permanent vocations within the government, but continued to be employed for various projects that required professional painters, such as the creation of traditional painted portraits of the monarch. The abolition of the Bureau, however, also led to the creation of the modern artist. Painters were no longer workers given instructions by the government, Moreover, with the abolition of the class system, the growing demand for art, and increased commerce, people from diverse backgrounds came to consider themselves as professional artists, more so in the colonial period. The term misul began to be popularly used to refer to fine arts toward the 1910s. The term began to be used in newspapers of the 1880s and 1890s as the Korean translation of the Japanese term bijisu. By the 1910s, the term misul came to clearly refer to fine arts and was popularized among the general public. Related terms like misulga that refer to artists also emerged, and misul, as well as misulga, came to be associated with aesthetic fine arts, moving on from the traditional conception of art and painting as practical techniques. Ko Hee-dong began his career at this time and is considered to be Korea's first oil painter. Ko Hee-dong was exposed to Western language and culture from his father, Ko Young-chul, who learned English by accompanying the 1881 delegation to Tianjin, and worked as an English interpreter for the 1883 delegation to the United States. His initiation as an artist began at the age of 22, when he started frequenting the studios of renowned professional painters An Jung-sik and Jo Sak-jin. However, art education at the time was largely confined to faithfully copying Chinese art manuals. Disillusioned with this, he began to develop an interest in Western painting, which he encountered through his interactions with foreigners like French ceramist Léopold Rémillon during his time at the Imperial Household Ministry. Ko met Rémillon through his French teacher Émile Martel and saw Rémillon draw a portrait of Martel in charcoal. Although Ko Hee-dong was neither a professional painter employed by the court nor an official dispatched by the government, he was able to enroll to the Tokyo School of Fine Arts in Japan with the help of Komiya Miyomatsu, a family friend and the Japanese vice minister of the Korean Imperial Household Ministry, who was also responsible for proposing the establishment of Korea's first museum in 1907. At that time, the Government General of Korea encouraged young Koreans to study in Japan as part of the colonial assimilation policy. In particular, they promoted the arts, such as painting and music, which had strong emotional appeal, over fields like politics or economics, with the aim of reducing the desire for independence. A system called Seongwa was implemented that allowed foreigners to enter Japanese universities without taking the standard entrance exams. Students who went to Japan under the system received tuition support from the Governor General's office. In 1909, Ko Hee-dong entered the Western-style painting department at the prestigious Tokyo School of Fine Arts under the Seongwa program. There, he studied Western-style painting under Professor Kuroda Seiki, who trained in France and played a pivotal role in the early development of Western-style painting in Japan. Numerous Korean students studied languages or sciences abroad by 1900, but Ko was the first to officially study Western painting and earn a degree outside of Korea. Although Ko returned to traditional ink painting after he returned to Korea in 1915, he initiated the first attempts at training in oil painting and embracing Western art. We will talk more about Ko Hee-dong and his artistic activities in more detail in the last session of the week. In this session, we looked at artists who traveled to China and Japan to obtain new knowledge and skills on Western art and technology. While court artists of the late Joseon period were given the task of obtaining a broader skill set on weaponry and machinery at the end of the 19th century, some went on to learn and bring back photography to Korea. In the early 20th century, artists like Ko Hee-dong began to study art and Western painting abroad, slowly but gradually introducing Western art to Korea. In the following session, let's look at new types of portrait paintings that appeared in Korea after the opening of ports.